The 43rd season on the Eberspeche Luge World Cup Tour has been run at a fast and furious pace with 9 World Cup and 1 World Championship race over the past 11 weeks. And it all concludes this weekend on a fast and furious track in St.Moritz, Switzerland. A warm afternoon for run number 2 of the men's singles competition, with the temperature in the Fahrenheit scale at 42 degrees and the ice temperature, the natural ice, just above the freezing mark. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer, soon to be joined by Team USA's Gordy Scheer as we take a look at the last-minute preparations on this track. It is the longest run of the season. I'm not exactly sure it's the longest physical track, but the 1 minute 6 second times are by far longer than anywhere else in the world. Earlier today, they ran run number 1 in the men's singles. We have some familiar names. We also have some surprises in the action. In third place, as we look at the list, the start runs, so I guess we will not show you 3, 2, 1 at the moment, but they will go from slowest to fastest. And to see Gleicher and Pavlichenko and Mueller right there, Aeger all among not the last to go, is a bit surprising. Nico Gleicher has the lead, and it's a commanding lead, about as big an advantage as we've seen anyone put down in run number 1 so far this season. We start run number 2 with Pavel Rapilov, the youth Olympic silver medalist from a year ago on this track in St. Moritz. And now we bring in Gordy Scheer, the 1998 Olympic silver medalist. And Gordy, what to make of that first heat?
Well, it was interesting to say the least. I think we saw weather coming into play a little bit, and this is going to set us up for a very interesting second heat with people moving all around the leaderboard.
Well, in the early going, we'll do some discussion. We'll talk St. Moritz. We'll talk the sport of luge. And we had a tweet come in from one of your athletes, Brittany Arndt, who wanted to mention that St. Moritz is, of course, known sometimes for speeding up as a long first heat moves along, or a second heat, and with the advantage to the ladder sleds. We didn't see that so much earlier today.
Yeah, I made a poor attempt at predicting what happens in with ice conditions here at St. Moritz, so I'm getting out of that business quickly. But we definitely will see what happens here, and that's as far as I'm going, Tim. Okay. I'm leaving it there.
You know, and I did qualify by saying that I've covered a lot of bobsleigh races here, and that's the case when the sun starts to shine. Often it'll warm up the frost on the track. But we'll see what happens. As you said, let's see Rapilov having a much cleaner run here in the second heat. He was bouncing off of a number of walls the first time down.
Yeah, a little tap out of Gunter Sachs, that right wall, and some problems going into Portago, the finish curve. He definitely lost some time there.
Such a great track, such a fun track. We see the onlookers, all coaches and supporters, no spectators. That's been tough. That has been tough for the athletes.
It's definitely been tough on the athletes, but I can tell you that they're all happy to be here in St. Moritz. It's just such a unique sliding facility, natural ice, just gorgeous settings, beautiful town, nice people.
Now Mikhail Leshik was about 700s up on Rapilov after run number 1. Yeah, beautiful town, great setting. As I've mentioned a couple of times, when you come to St. Moritz, Gordy, make sure you bring your wallet, and maybe bring someone else's wallet.
Well, I think as thrilled as the athletes are to be here, I think the administrators are equally concerned with the bill once they get it.
It's not the destination to head towards when your luggage is lost. Take it from someone who knows.
That sounds like a nightmare.
The pair of underwear and the toothbrush alone, I think, ran triple figures. But Leshik trailing Rapilov by a half second. That's not a big surprise. That's not an indicator yet of what the track is doing, because Pavel had all of the trouble in run number 1.
Some skidding in tree corner, I believe that was the first of the 4 rights. It was either tree or bridge, I'm not quite sure. But I think the problems really started, and we're going to see a lot of problems in the Shamrock Devil's Bike transition.
1:10:282, which is actually the slowest run you will see this weekend, likely any discipline, any race. 1:10. Who'd have thought we'd still be seeing those kind of times, right?
It's a lot of time on the sled.
On a non-crashing run.
Yeah, it's a lot of time on a sled.
30th place after run number 1, a man who is so good he warrants 4 names. Theodor Andrei Aurelian Torea from Romania.
After the start ramp, which is decent pitch, settle in these long first few corners, the kinks, followed by wall and 2 snake corners. This is really an opportunity to let the sled run and try and build speed. There's not a ton you can do. I mean, you need to stay on line, but it's not really getting into the harder, more technical drives until you hit that sunny corner, where they are right now.
Now approaching the horseshoe.
That's horseshoe. This section of the course, that's really one of the key. Setting up for successful lines. This is diving out of Gunter Sachs. Such a fast portion of the track. Great feeling on the sled. Crosses the finish time with a 1:09.638.
A distant 1.2 behind Pavel Rupilov. The question is, how long will Pavel be in that spot? I mean, the first couple were only about 1/10 of a second up on him. So now we're going to move into some athletes who have quite a bigger lead.
See a little bit, using a little bit too much at the first kink, and just taking a little bit too much of the course there.
Rupert Staudinger told me before the season what he loves about luge is, though it makes him nervous sometimes, he loves the challenge of getting out of his comfort zone to grow.
Taking a little time to settle into his sled after his paddles. Digging his fingertip spikes into the ice. The only place you can accelerate the sled. Getting into nice aerodynamic position, toes pointed. Letting the air flow over his body without trying to take too much of a peak. Steering the sled with his shoulders and feet and handles.
The real challenge for Rupert over the next year or so will be meeting some relatively rough UK standards to make the GBR Olympic team. And he's been pretty steady in making the World Cup races this year. He certainly would love to be an Olympian again, but they don't just pick and choose anyone just because they happen to be the best in their nation.
Yeah, every National Olympic Committee can decide what their standards will be. And some will field a full team and others will choose not to.
And this is a nation, of course, with as great a tradition as any country in the world in the sport of skeleton. The Luger Staudinger across 2:18.221 for the 2 runs. Second place behind Pavel Rupilov. Look at Pavel. Look at his face. He's mad about his first run still.
And he's probably not happy with his second run either. You know, he did make a couple little mistakes as well in that second run.
Now Andrei Manzi for Ukraine. He's got 7/10 to play with here. So as you see, 63 hundredths. And that's quite a bit, even on a long track.
You know, we saw in training that the times were like 1:07. And some of the top sleds were still separated just by, hundredths of seconds. And in fact, we're seeing it in this race as well, with the one exception of Nico Gleicher, who's currently in the lead. Such a beautiful track. It really is just gorgeous. Sleds are so quiet. None of the normal chatter that you hear associated with tracks that are above ground and made out of concrete and steel. And this track is incredibly smooth. It's almost like flying. You can hear Manzi's feet dragging on the ice. That's time.
It's a beautiful track, and what's fun is there's a road that goes alongside most of it, so you get to walk up and down, watch it. Lots of great places to view the action.
Yeah, it's painful when your feet are on the ice to watch back at your video and hear them tapping. It's such a hard habit to break.
Well, the lead has been taken over by Manzi. Not a big surprise, as he had 6/10 in the bank over Rapilov. Early going here. It's Ukraine leading over Russia and Great Britain, with all of the world champion and Olympic champions still to come.
There's that rough transition, Shamrock Devil's Dyke, where we're seeing a lot of people touch that right wall.
Valentin Cretu from Romania. Now on course. 5 quick paddles. He said the hardest part of luge for him is to go into the start of every race knowing that he doesn't have a chance to win. That's a tough thing to say, to admit. But he does add, Gordy, that I dream of that day when I will win. I really do dream about that, and I hope the day will come. So, I mean, if you don't have those ambitions, you know, you don't have the motivation to improve, right?
Yeah, you got to have the desire. You also have to enjoy the sport too. And if you're not enjoying it, you know, which clearly he does, then really there's not a lot of incentive to be involved. Nobody's doing this at the advice of their financial planner, I can guarantee you that.
Well, keeping it close, Valentin Cretu within 1/10 of a second here. That's an amount of time that could be made up or lost big time on these final few curves. We've certainly learned that in the doubles in the first run of the women, or the men rather. Across the finish line, kept it close, but not close enough. Third fastest run of the heat. That photo you see there, Sepp Bentz is the picture. And if you missed our coverage during run number 1, this is a longtime legend in sliding sports here in Switzerland. An Olympic medalist in bobsleigh, an executive board member of the International Luge Federation, who sadly passed away last night on the eve of the World Cup that he was somewhat responsible for bringing to Switzerland. Now Sweden's Svante Koala.
A little bit of right direction at the start. Adding distance is all that's really doing.
22-year-old from Sweden. Sweden very rarely dominates World Cup races, but all things considered, this has been a good year for Sweden, as Svante has qualified for the World Cup, Out of Nations Cup, every weekend this season. His sister has also made the main draw in a couple of races.
And their father's a former slider.
That's correct. And perhaps this is a renaissance of Sweden. You, of course, when you were taking part in doubles, Bengten and Anders had a competitive team.
Yes.
Sled going.
And they've rebuilt the track up in Hammarstrand this winter. Natural track like this one.
It's a country, Gordy, where surprisingly Sweden has never hosted a Winter Olympic Games. They've been in the hunt, as he keeps it close within 800s, but back 3 spots. This is a close race so far. Yeah, Sweden has been in the bidding, maybe even been the runner-up in the bid a couple of times, but that's surprising.
Definitely a surprise. This is that sort of flat upper portion where just carrying speed is key.
A lot of people have been impressed by the showing in his first year of this young Bosnian, Mirza Nikolaev. He's 19 years old from Sarajevo. He lists as his hobby, Gordy, swimming. And you might be quick to say that that's nothing to do with a winter sport on ice. But think of the muscles, right? The arms, the core, the agility. There have got to be some similarities.
Yeah, if you're a sprinter in swimming, there is certainly a lot of crossover. The lats, as you said, the arms, explosive power. Those are all things that are rewarded at the start. I know, some problems in Nash-Dixon. And hopefully he can get it under control going into Horseshoe here. But yeah, our current USA Luge president and two-time Olympian Erin Warren, she came from a swimming background and sixth place finisher in Nagano, so clearly there might be some crossover.
Nikolaev now on the bottom few curves, jumping out of Gunther Sachs into Martineau. You're in the city or the town of Celerina. You start in one town, you end in another town. That's how long this course is. 219.359. Disappointing second run and final run of the season. Time to regroup for the summer. Put on a little more muscle mass. Maybe get some teammates. It'd be great to see the Bosnian program continue to improve.
Yeah, just a lot of potential. That's between Nash and Dixon, coming right out of the sunny corner and going into Horseshoe. He was fortunate to get that back under control.
Riks Rositas, the first of the Latvians, his teammate Arturs Darznieks is in 5th place after run number 1. So Riks kind of mellow off of the handles there, but a clean settle and a 1/10 of a second advantage over the current leader at the bottom, Andrei Manzi of Ukraine. Last call, sorry, Guardia. Ooh, major problems.
Oh, that's an unusual mistake. He was going for it. He just had his head back, trying not to look, and he didn't realize he had a little bit of direction, and by the time he saw it, he was in the wall.
He was 300s up. Now he's a 10th back, and it's going to just continue to bleed. Now, I was going to say, last call for our viewers tuning in live around the world. If you have comments or questions, please let us know on Twitter at Luge Announcer. You can also email us luge.announcer@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. I think we are approaching 100 countries for the season with our live streaming coverage, which is amazing.
That's great for the sport, and really nice to be able to reach our audiences around the world on a regular and live basis.
Hitting at the top, skidding at the bottom, but all within 700ths of a second, which that's good news for Arturs Darznieks later. If his sled is going to be that fast and he can keep it clean.
Yeah, for sure. We should also remind everyone that these races are also archived on the FIL's website.
That's correct. There's even some...
there it is. Mistake at the top in the kinks.
There's a YouTube channel that's been showing, Luge channel's been showing races as well, and highlights. Now Josef Ninnis wearing bib number 1 because he was the first off, last to qualify yesterday, so he led off run number 1 and held the lead for quite some time. After Ninnis goes, the next 4 are going to be interesting. Dominik Fischneller, David Gleicher, Semen Pavlichenko, and Jonas Mueller.
All names that we expected to see contending for a win.
Exactly.
As we suspect, the track was deteriorating.
Ninnis falling behind Manzi at this point, 4-time Olympian.
We'll see if Ninnis can gain speed at the bottom, which is usually his MO.
His best finish at the 4 games was a 20th in 2014. He is in the green now. Really nice lines.
We could be looking at a 10th or 1500s here if he can go clean through the quarter.
Speed at 84 miles per hour. Josef Ninnis of Slovakia into the lead by a quarter of a second. It's a nice advantage. It's about the advantage Nico Gleicher holds over everyone else after run number 1. But that's a story for about a half hour from now. At the moment, it's Slovakia leading over Ukraine, Russia, and Romania.
Good position on the sled. You can see his right leg driving down at the exit of horseshoe.
Okay, the next 4 athletes, Gordy, between them, they have 24 World Cup victories, 2 World Championships, and an Olympic gold medal. Fischnaller, Gleicher, Pavlichenko, and Mueller. They hit some sort of bad ice patch in run number 1. And we thought the track was slowing down until Felix Lock went, but we're not sure what happened. All we know is perhaps with some clean runs here, these guys could push it up 5, 6, 7 spots.
Beautiful straight lines from Fischnaller. You don't see him playing around with the sled, moving it from left to right. Anytime you steer these sleds, they're slowing down and creating extra friction and adding distance.
4/10 of a second rather up as he goes through Nash and Dixon, named for the British athletes who won the Olympic gold medal in 2-man, the 1964 Olympics.
Nice job so far. That was the critical part, one of the critical parts of this track, and he navigated it beautifully.
Dominic Fischnaller had a 1:08.408 in run number 1. It'll be interesting to see how this compares. Nearly touches the wall, but keeps the sled in the proper direction. 84.4 miles an hour, 1:08.407. You know, he beat run number 1, Gordy, by 1,000th of a second. So I'm not sure what to make of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. It'll be hard to tell until we see these next few sleds coming down to understand what was happening in that first heat. Perhaps they're just off.
The more important stat is he's over a half second clear of everyone that's come down before him.
Very true.
Yeah, these 4, Fischnaller, Gleicher, Pavlichenko, and Mueller, had start numbers 28, 31, 29, and 25. So they were definitely in a cluster. For back in the day, the conspiracy theorists would have said they turned off the refrigeration for 5 minutes. Now David Gleicher, not only with that Olympic gold medal, but now with 2 World Championship podiums, both earned last week, both bronze in Koenigsegg.
It's a great shot, long shot of the straightaway going into the 2 kinks and then the gradual wall corner. Little 2 snake corners into Sunny. These guys have made great strides aerodynamically. Oh, Nash Dixon problems, and he's over.
Oh, the best of times, worst of times for David Gleicher this season. He's had several crashes, Gordy, to go along with 2 podiums at the Worlds, and now he provides us with the first crash of this weekend's World Cup. He'll get back on that sled.
He's going to want to get on, and he should be able to cross the finish line. He should be able to generate enough momentum. In this sport, you have to be able to cross the finish line without paddling with your spiked gloves.
For a second there, I wondered whether he was okay because he was lying flat, but I should have known better that that's just the way to react for an athlete, to keep it calm, right?
Yeah, reacting, and also probably is just a plain old upset with himself and bummed out.
Unfortunately, this is going to cost him a top 10 position in the World Cup overall, because it's just been such an inconsistent season. He's had a disqualification. This is his 2nd crash to go along with a number of podiums on the World Cup and the World Championships. He'll still wear that Olympic champion title for another year, though, Gordy.
Yeah, he will. But boy, what a crazy situation. You know, to see 1 crash in the entire race thus far, and it comes from the Olympic champion.
Yeah, from one of the hottest lugers in the world right now.
Yeah, it just goes to show you that mistakes can happen to anybody.
But what he's going to do is he's going to put on his jacket, pack up his sled, and root very hard for his brother, who will be coming down last year in run number 2.
That's true.
Now Zeman Pavlichenko, the 2015 world champion. He's got that little stripe on his helmet that's sort of a guide, isn't it? a visual guide?
I believe it's actually the Uvex logo, which is the manufacturer of the helmet and face shield. And he's using that probably as a sight, a reference, a visual reference to know where his head is and where his line of sight should be.
Or perhaps as a reminder to not look up, because Pavlichenko
Exactly.
rarely does look up. Now, around the sunny curve, one of the two permanent fixtures here, Nash and Dixon.
He's losing time.
And then Horseshoe.
Losing a little bit of time to Dominic Fischnaller.
Well, this will be interesting. Pavlichenko had a podium last week. A good showing at the World Championship, second in the sprint competition.
Driving nice lines to this point, but 1/10 of a second behind, making a slight adjustment into the first of the 4 right-hand corners.
13 career World Cup victories, second only to Felix Lock among active men. And to the finish, second place, distant second, as Dominic Fischnaller continues to climb up. And if you look at your start list, Gordy, we got Jonas coming up next. We got Ludwig in a little bit, but Fischnaller, who began in 22nd place, he could crack the top 15.
I would agree, definitely. I would agree. And we'll definitely have a more clear idea with this next sled.
Already on course, Jonas Mueller. It's a flat, wide start after that ramp. But you can ill afford to make any mistakes here where the speeds are still about half of what they'll be down near the bottom of the track.
Mueller doing a little driving on the straightaways. Nice early entrances, middle early entrances into the upper corners. Little tap before Dixon, nothing major.
23 years old from Bludenz, Austria, which is not far from the Swiss border.
Little touch there between Shamrock and Devil's Dyke.
Now into the red.
Yeah, I think those two little taps are going to catch him. Unless that improved aerodynamics can really help him down here at the bottom.
2019 World Sprint Champion Jonas Mueller, a 2-time winner on the World Cup. His season comes to an end, falling back 2 spots here. It's always tough. You want to end the season on a high note because you don't want to spend all summer thinking about what went wrong at the end. But all things considered, pretty good year for Jonas Mueller. Like his teammate Gleicher, it was inconsistent with some crashes mixed in with some podiums.
Taking a nice high line through the horseshoe corner.
Dominic Fischnaller still in front for Italy. And now the first of 3 from the USA. Johnny Gusterson out of Messina, New York on the St. Moritz River, not too far from Canada. Stone's throw, literally.
Johnny is super powerful at the start and really is just such a strong athlete. A little bit of a bobble in his settle, but if he can continue to hold some speed, build some speed. He had some mistakes in his first run, so probably just looking to improve upon that run. Might be kind of tough to catch Dominic, but if he can stay in second place, I think he'd be really happy with his position.
Famous horseshoe curve, diving out and now losing more time, 1600ths back. So this will be hoping for a top 3. It looks like the lead is out of the question. Gordy, what would Johnny's biggest challenge be this offseason?
I think he's going to keep working on his start, keep working on his strength, and keep working on his sled. I don't think he's got any particular one challenge.
4/10 of a second back for, or rather fourth place, also 4/10 of a second back for Johnny Gustavson. It's Fischnaller, Pavlichenko, and Mueller, the top 3 right now. Those are 3 of the 4 that came from that group whom we thought should be moving up in the standings.
Little bit of movement on the straightaway. Nothing major, though.
Well, moments ago, Olympic champion David Gleicher proved to us that anything can happen from even the best in the world, as he provided the first crash of the day. Now, the wily veteran, Johannes Ludwig, 34-year-old Olympic bronze medalist from Oberhof.
34 years old, but still with one of the fastest starts on the circuit.
And the fastest of the run so far, 4.85. It's just like his fellow Thuringian, Tatjana Höfner, who continued to have the fastest starts among the women, or among the top 2 or 3, into her late 30s.
Must be something in the water there. Beautiful position on the sled in the upper portion. Nice Nash Dixon.
This is Johannes's 14th year on the World Cup, with his best season finishing being in the past 3 years, and he'll look to better all of that. He's number 2 in the standings entering this final race, and looking safe to stay there.
Building some speed here too. Beautiful lines, beautiful exit of Sachs into Martinau and Portigo.
Nice run by Johannes Ludwig, who began this heat in 17th place. But no matter what happens, I believe he's protected his 2nd place overall. It's going to take a lot. I believe the only person that could catch him might be Max Longenham, who would have to jump over 2 or 3 guys, including Ludwig, to end up in the top 2.
And that was a nice run. Not too much to pick apart about that one.
In fact, as we look at those World Cup standings, that's the story within the race today. It's outside chance that Germany could have the top 3 positions with Lock, Ludwig, and Longenham, the 3 L's at the end of the day. Well, this is a bit of a surprise this late in run number 2. Anton Dukash, who's been pretty steady over the last few weeks, including a top 20 last week at the World Championships. 16th place after run 1 here.
You hope to see non-traditional luge powers emerge, and that would be really wonderful to see these guys pull forward.
There were a couple of Ukrainian women back when you were competing that were occasionally on the podium, right?
Yep. Natalie Yakashenko and Lilian Luden.
Right. 136.261, that latest split stop, that puts him quite a bit behind Ludwig at this point. It'd just be nice to see him hang in the top 20 in this race, but even that's looking a little more dubious with each split clock.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any major mistakes. It just seems like he's just falling backward. Sliding down a mile of ice sculpture. It's just incredible.
To the finish, final Ukrainian, 108.993. That knocks him back several spots into 5th, ahead of American Johnny Gustafson, just behind Austrian Jonas Mueller. So it's Ludwig, Fischnaller, and Pavlichenko, the top 3, with the top 15 still to come.
Heading into sunny curve. Yeah, just slowly bleeding time throughout the whole run.
All right, action continuing here in the Engadine region of the Swiss Alps, 6,000 feet above sea level. The second of 3 from the USA. This is Tucker West. And Tucker was telling me earlier today that really the key for him is the horseshoe curve, the exit of horseshoe. He said if you hit telephone too early and catch too much height at the end of the curve, problems will really start to compound. So we'll see what happens in about 30 seconds. We know Tucker's fast here at the start.
Yeah, Tucker's a great starter. Not his best looking start, added a little bit of distance, but with a good run, I think Tucker might I don't know if he's going to be able to keep up with Ludwig on this run, but if he can drive a decent run, his sled has really been working a lot better this year. His sliding is really nice, looks more relaxed on the sled. So I would love to see Tucker have a good run.
He's a three-time World Cup race winner, several other podiums go along with some World Championship podiums in team relay.
And he nailed that horseshoe telephone combination.
Looking at the moment like he's vying for a second place position down here, as he doesn't seem to be able to find any speed despite a relatively clean run.
Yeah, this is interesting. Little lateral direction coming out of Martin now.
They had several skids on that final curve as he's back 3 spots behind the big 3, Ludwig, Bischnaller, and Pavlichenko. So Tucker West will see one more race before his season's over. He will definitely represent the USA tomorrow in team relay in singles, regardless of what Chris Mazdar does, because Chris has got to race doubles.
Tucker looking forward to a summer at the USA Luge Indoor Start Training Facility, no doubt.
Maciej Sokovic of Poland, interestingly, despite being in 14th place in the first run, had the fastest speed. Something like 84.9 miles per hour, or 85.9. To check that out, but it was ridiculously quick.
Yeah, speeds in luge are sometimes difficult to determine. They use the timing eyes, and
Sokovic now through Dixon, approaching Horseshoe. We will take a close look at that speed trap when it comes up through telephone. He's 0.3 of a second back. This is run number 2 continuing, the final race of the season for these men. Poland expected, of course, to field a team tomorrow in team relay. They've had top 6 and 7 place finishes and even a podium earlier this year in the relay. Several taps in the lower portion for Maciej Sokovic.
I think we're starting to see the order kind of catch up with itself.
What was interesting as Ludwig continues to lead was earlier this season, Altenburg, they held a race, very warm conditions, and if you had that start order somewhere 17 through 20, you were golden. And we'll see if that is the case for Johannes Ludwig. There was a race last year as well, and I think that may have been Altenburg or Oberhof. It was Oberhof, where Ludwig was 20th, 21st after run number 1. He won that race. It's great of him to come over and talk to Matthias there. Now Gins Virgins, who last year on this track captured Olympic gold, the Youth Olympic Games. Gordy, he was fast all week in training, but something happened in run number 1, and that something may have just been start number.
Yeah, I think he also had some mistakes.
Yeah, that's right.
He definitely made some minor mistakes, but I am starting to see some lines in the ice in those upper corners, and even here, it looks like maybe conditions are starting to come into play a bit now.
We were talking about this earlier. In the morning, when the sun comes out, that actually can be a good thing, even on a warm day. But maybe not so much in the afternoon and not so much on a cloudy day on this natural track. It's keeping it relatively close. The Latvian sleds have been quick at the bottom of the track.
This is true. Yeah, he's definitely keeping it close. At 1600ths of a second, he's almost within striking distance if he can hold it together.
Gins Virgins earlier today in doubles, a young Latvian team captured their first ever World Cup gold. Virgins will not, as he's a half second or a quarter of a second behind the Olympic bronze medalist Johannes Ludwig, who's not known for his celebrations, but he can entertain us nonetheless in the leader box.
Yeah, it looked like he had a chance to build some speed there going into the fast Gunter Sachs dropping corner. But it just didn't materialize. That's the lines I was talking about, looking behind the sled.
Now the final 12 from St.Moritz, Switzerland, and from Austria. Reinhard Aeger, a two-time World Cup winner in his career. Both of those victories coming in recent years, but he's been competing in the sport for a dozen seasons at the World Cup level. One of few athletes who actually took part in the last race to be held in 2012 here in St. Moritz. He finished 14th that day.
Looking at Aeger's sled, I don't know if he's riding on the same design as David Gleicher is. He had some distinctive elements on his sled that I'm not necessarily, maybe I'm not seeing it.
In the Kufins or in the main
pod?
body?
Yeah, in the pod where the athletes lay.
See how this split time shakes for Reinhard Aeger. Already back and looking at a potential third, fourth place finish at best at this point.
And equally significant with not a bad looking run.
It's going to be really interesting with these final 10. Reinhard Aeger, he's going to regroup during the off season. At the moment, he's on the outside looking in his hopes of making it to a third Olympic Games. He's got a lot of young, strong teammates. This is the most personality I've seen from Joe Ludwig in years. Such a mellow guy.
Yeah, he definitely seems like a low-key type. A little bit close there on the left wall for the athlete. And don't want to move the sled too much around on those straightaways. You want to do most of your driving in the corners.
Well, the final American getting ready to go at the top. USA did not join the tour until mid-season, and you kind of get the sense that the program is just starting to warm up the last few weeks or so. Summer Britcher with the podium in women's luge, fourth place for the team relay last week. Chris Mazdar potentially on his way to his best singles result of this abbreviated campaign.
Chris with a rough off-season, shoulder and elbow surgeries, and learning a lot about his sled and trying to understand what makes it fast. It's definitely been a challenge. Some of these other teams are really stepping up their games on the technical end, particularly the Austrian team. They're really doing a great job.
32-year-old now lives in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we can only hope the World Cup will return to that track outside of Salt Lake City and Park City again. Fun place to go.
That may be in the works. We will see.
Quarter of a second back, he could turn it on and have a second place, number 2 show up down here at the bottom.
He did a nice job of maintaining his speed on the first run. We'll see if he can do the same thing.
To the finish, the American is back 3 spots into 4th, in danger of now falling way out of the top 10. He started in 11th. He was hoping to make a bid for the top 10. One more race for Chris Mazdar, the Olympic silver medalist. That's the team relay doubles tomorrow, and then we wish Chris all the success with the birth of he and Mara's first baby a little later on this spring. You see that debris cost him 3 spots. Kevin Fischnaller, Südtyrolean. Italy has the 2 Fischnallers and then a lot of young athletes who were around for most of the season. But sport director Armin Zugler only brought the 2 cousins from Mironsen to this World Cup finale.
Well, there's a lot of Südtirol spirit in this track. I think this hand-built track is made usually each November by people from Südtirol.
Now they'll have their hands full with their own track not far in Cortina that they're building or refurbishing that historic venue for the 2026 Olympics. 1,000th of a second in back of the German at the last split. Now he's losing a little more. So Johannes Ludwig with a chance now to move into the top 10.
Very close to the right wall in the Shamrock Devil's Dyke transition, but a nice line. Little adjustment. Going into leap, I believe that was, sorry.
To the finish, and he is back 3 spots, 34, 3,500 behind. So that man, Johannes Ludwig, has jumped from 17th place to 10th place. To be fair, all of these split times have been very tight between 17 and 10, and it will remain that for at least one more, and then the margin gets a little wider.
Exiting the horseshoe corner, which is a critical spot on the track to set up the entire lower portion of the course.
It's Germany over Latvia and Austria, and here's the next of the Germans, the youngest of the group, Moritz Elias Bollmann, two-time junior world champion, 21 years old, from Sonnenberg, which is right next to Oberhof. 2 of the World Cup races were held this year. The Oberhof scheduled race and then the makeup of the move to Lake Placid race. This event, St.Moritz, is taking place where originally it was going to be the Olympic test event in Beijing. So does that mean, Gordy, that whoever wins today has that test event jinx?
I don't know if anyone will make that connection.
Right.
But a nice start. He's got a decent lead. We'll see what he can do with it. And see how, if there's any crossover between his sled setup and that of Ludwig's.
Moritz Bollmann, bit of a breakout season. His second year, first full season in this German program. He's been shuffled a little in and out of the lineup, but did get the call.
Falling back here, Tim. Yeah, falling back for sure.
Okay, and he's fallen behind his fellow turning in here, and I think Ludwig's about to pick off another.
I think you're right. Moritz sliding in St. Moritz.
Very well put. St. Moritz Bollmann dropping 2 spots. So lost in the shuffle a little bit is the fact that Jens Bergens has also moved up several spots, and he remains in 2nd place behind Ludwig of Germany.
Yeah, for Burns's, I think it's more where he should have been based on how he was training all week long.
Absolutely. 8 remain now here in the Swiss Alps. This beautiful natural track. 21 nations came to this weekend's World Cup, 133 athletes. And the next athlete is Alexander Gorbachev. That's one of those names that just flows off the tongue. Now look at that. That's the first really good look we've seen of the wind. And I know you have not competed a lot here, Gordy, but on any track, the wind can play a little game with the athlete, right?
It definitely can. You know, the most notorious wind track is Calgary. There's a long straightaway headed into a 270 used to be a long straightaway heading to 270-degree Kreisel, and it could wreak havoc on you. That said, I don't know if there's any points on this track. There are a lot more trees here, especially up in the upper portion of the track, that should help alleviate a lot of that. Also, a lot of the wind shades, or the sun shades, also act as wind shades.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, to your point, that area above here, above Horseshoe, is mostly through the woods, and then you re-enter the forest for several hundred meters at this point.
Yeah, when you exit Gunter Sachs, which is the final of 4 right-hand corners, the track really accelerates, and you open up into a wide field.
Gorbachev, the Russian, making the first real serious run at Ludwig in the last 15 minutes or so. Can he stay in the green? Russia has not been fast down at the bottom of the track, but it's good enough 2:16.356. He will hang on to a top 8 performance. A nice run for Johannes Ludwig. But
An amazing run.
He'll pack up the gear and head on home to his wife and his boys. And actually, to that point, in a normal season, Gordy, athletes could do that in Europe. He could actually get into his car and go home, but everyone has had to travel together, test together at the end of every weekend, and then, of course, entering the new nation.
Yeah, and a great record of tests for the FIL this season.
Now, Max Longenham, the winner of a Sprint World Cup race earlier this year on his home track, and one of the few races not won by Felix Lock on the World Cup. And he could make a run at the top 3 in the World Cup overall. He sits in 5th place, but if Max can take the lead and move up 2 or 3 more positions, I think he's going to jump past Fischneller and Pavlichenko and give Germany 1-2-3 on the season.
That's incredible, but it also has to be said that there were quite a few races in Germany this season.
No question about it. It has to be said. And Germany is about to close the books on a 1-2-3 women's result in the overall point standings, which of course used to be the norm, but the success has been spread out much more in recent years.
Longenham doing a good job of driving the sled middle to middle early into all of these corners. Nice and smooth on. Good position on the sled. Not a lot of noise or ice cutting. This is a good run.
84.7, 108.052. 84.7 was the speed. Big lead for Max Longenham. So just too quick, and the action moving along too quickly to do the exact math. But I can tell you, he's within 400ths of the next couple to go. All athletes whom he could pass. And I think that would put him in the top 3 in the World Cup overall. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. Now, depending on if he's riding on a similar setup, he could be poised to, as Ludwig, he should be poised to do pretty well here.
Wolfgang Kendall, 2-time world champion, sprint and men's singles on his home track back in 2017. Wolfie has been plugging along for years in the sport. He finished 12th the last time there was a World Cup on this historic track in St. Moritz in 2012.
It would be normal to see some red being a little bit behind in a normal occasion. And then he would build speed down at the bottom. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it today, though.
3 Olympics for Wolfie, all top 10 finishes, but he's going to have all he can do to make a 4th Olympic team next year with the likes of the Gleichers and Mueller also on this strong Austrian program.
A little tap of the wall between Shamrock and Devilsdyke, that's not going to help his cause.
No, he is not going to take over the lead. Max Longenham just hit a home run a moment ago.
Now, would it make sense that Longenham is on the same setup as a Ludwig?
You would think that Jan Eichhorn and that Thuringian coaching staff would be setting them up the same, but that's not a guarantee. I know Tony and Sasha out of Oberhof, they do their own sled in doubles. So Kendall in 3rd place, a half second behind Longenham. You know, Max may make his way onto the podium. Forget just the top 3 in the points.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibilities at this point.
Okay, we got a great battle. Only 100th of a second separating the next 3, 5th, 4th, and 3rd place. And you may recall earlier this season, Arturs Darznieks of Latvia was in podium position on his home track in Zagulda before falling off into a career best 4th place. Wouldn't it be sweet if he could reverse that in the final race and jump up from 5th to 3rd? It's within reach. But first thing, better Max Longenham. That's going to be tough in its own.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough, but he could do it. Just keep an eye on the splits here. Make sure he's got it. Just ensure that he's driving smooth lines. He's down to 200ths of a second now. It's just got to be smooth, aerodynamic position, not fight the sled, 0.003 of a second back now. Just got to let the sled run. It is going to be a tall order at this point. Little drop of the feet between Nash and Dixon.
Now the exit of Horseshoe. This is where he can find some time. The Latvian sleds can get quick down here. Still within 600s. The 27-year-old from Sigulda.
Decent looking lines through here, but losing time still.
It's going to be a top 2, Gordy, but I don't think it's going to be a top 1.
I don't think so either. It would take some magic here in these last 2 corners.
Darznieks to the finish in 2nd place, losing another 0.2 of a second or so down at the bottom. All things being considered, a good finale to the season for archers with a guaranteed top 6 placing. That will be his 2nd best result of the season.
Yeah, he's happy with the run, as he should be. You know, I mean, Longenham just pulled one out, as did Ludwig. So I think the Germans definitely nailed their sled setup for this 2nd heat.
Well, we've seen Ludwig. He had the lead for a while. We've seen Longenham. He has the lead now. And now their teammate, also out of Oberhof, this is Sebastian Legg. Sebastian did not make last week's World Championship squad, so he had to watch. In fact, he was a forerunner. He did finish 16th last year at the Worlds. And he does have 2 World Cup podiums in his career.
He's got 2 World Cup podiums in his career, but he only has 1/100th of a second to work with. So this is going to be super, super tight. He's going to need to be perfect if he wants to keep up with his teammate.
Now he falls into the red. Felix Lock, Roman Repelov, and Nico Gleicher, the top 3 to follow. But it looks like Longenham will pick off another.
A 1/10 of a second. He's actually, at this point, if he continues, if he can't find some time in the bottom, he may drop a position or 2. Rough entry into Telephone, but gets it under control into Shamrock.
This is a remarkable story brewing here that's really going to be told after Sebastian comes down, as Longenham's picked off another, but we've got a couple of greats waiting. So around Martineau, Portago to the finish. Sebastian Bly dropping 5 spots, dropping nearly out of the top 10. He'll hang in the top 9 at worst. So Longenham 1 position away from the podium after beginning the run in 7th place. I think he has sealed his top 3 in the overall.
I think you're right, Tim. And just mistakes that started at Horseshoe and just really materialized at the exit of Telephone.
So a grab of the sled from sport director Norbert Lock of this powerful German team, but Norbert will look right back to the top because his star pupil, his Olympic champion, his son, now grabbing the handles. Felix Lock, winner of 9 races this year. He clinched the World Cup overall 3 weeks ago. And on course. And when everyone was going slowly in run number 1, Felix was the one exception.
Look at his position. He's just going for it. Just absolutely bombing, giving it everything he's got. He wants to win this race. Even though he's got that title, he's still a competitor and a champion. He wants to win every race he's entering. But falling back a little bit.
And now into the red. Let's see how he can handle Horseshoe. If he's clean and shoots down, Felix can find green on the lower part. Still just 0.04 of a second.
Not outside of the realm of possibilities here.
He's accomplished so
300th.
much.
Oh, it's getting close. It's going to be tight.
Now to the bottom. This could be within the 1,000th of a second. Felix
a nice
Lock,
line. Very nice line.
48-time winner on the World Cup to the finish. And not quite enough. He could still end up on the podium. It's not guaranteed. Max Longenham has earned a podium position. I believe Germany has earned the top 3 spots in this year's World Cup points. We'll know that in a moment, but first this race needs to be decided. with still one Russian and one Austrian to come. It was a victory ride nonetheless.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, given the draw and his number, I think he did everything he could do in his position.
Two-time Olympic gold medalist who was about a half a run away from a three-peat in Pyeongchang in 2018 before an accident caused him to drop back several spots and hand that gold over to David Gleicher. So some debris in the track. There'll be a little hold just to build the suspense, Gordy, for our final two
sleds
to come.
Yeah, that must be due to all the wind that's blowing around right now.
Here's the situation. Longenham has the lead, and Roman Repilov, fresh off of his second straight world championship, is getting ready at the top. His advantage is about 0.08 of a second. That basically has meant nothing this run, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. Boy,
you can't get that twig out of there. It's just become a comedy show late in this drama sports conclusion.
And I'm sure every second, you know, the next two sliders are thinking about conditions and just hoping that, you know, that they can get going as soon as possible.
For Roman Repilov, last year's World Cup overall winner, the World Championship last week made up for what had been an otherwise mediocre season with just one podium, a second place. But he took the world title for the second year in a row. Now he'll look to conclude this season on another high note. Can he catch Longenham, who has been the class of this field so far in run number 2?
Signs are pointing to it's going to be difficult right now. You know, he's down to a 0.02 of a second advantage.
Now he's behind by 0.06.
Yeah, this at 0.06, it's going to be tough for sure.
Roman Repilov, his brother, was the first to go early here in run number 2. Now the two-time junior champion and world champion and the two-time senior world champion is in danger of falling out of the top 5 here.
He's bleeding time.
Incredible. And we've seen this a lot from the Russians this season. Losing time down at the bottom. Repilov to the finish, and he falls back 3 spots. 2 Germans are on the podium on this day. Lock has clinched his spot. Longenham has clinched at least a second place. And the way things are trending here, Gordy,
it's going to be tight.
I mean, the lead that Nico Gleicher has is substantial, 31 hundredths.
It's not guaranteed, though. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
No.
I thought, you know, going into this race that it would be really, really hard for Gleicher to be challenged, but there's no guarantees at this point.
Well, Nico Gleicher, fresh off of a world championship of his own last Friday in the sprint competition, but rarely has he been in podium position after a first run, let alone in the lead. So he's had that to think about for 90 minutes. The final sled of the season, men's singles luge competition. Here is Nico Gleicher. His lead, Gordy, was 31 hundredths. Let's see what this first split tells us.
Well, he expanded it a bit at the start. He had a good aggressive start. He's only down 100th off of what he had. He was up 34. Now he's down to 33. So far, so good.
23 years old from outside of Innsbruck. His brother's an Olympic champion. He's a world champion.
Oh, but down half a tenth and a slight mistake between Nash and Dixon.
What will that cost him? We won't know at this split, 0.2. We won't know, in fact, until the finish time at this point. Or then there's one more split coming up here.
There is one more split. This is going to be real tight.
Looks like enough of a cushion for the Austrian. Last week in the team relay, Austria was a surprise winner over Germany. Will they do it again today in the final men's singles race? Nico Gleicher in search of his first ever World Cup victory. And he gets it. Nearly giving it all away, Gordy.
Tight race. Wow. Well, congratulations to all three of these athletes on an absolutely thrilling competition.
And a great show of sportsmanship, as the two Germans who end up second and third are the first to congratulate this first-time winner.
Wow. What a great accomplishment. My God. I mean,
boy, the Gleichers are the new big name in the sport of international luge, as his brother David Gleicher congratulates him, Wolfgang Kendall, and Rennie Friedel, the head coach of this emerging powerhouse in the sport of luge.
Nicely done in the upper portion. He was really just fighting to hang on, just bleeding time compared to the two German sleds.
Those are the German coaches celebrating Peter Pens. And wow, what a great celebration as brother meets brother. One's a world champion, one is an Olympic champion. And the only thing missing, Gordy, aside, of course, we check out these standings, aside from the thousands of spectators you would normally see here in the Swiss Alps cheering their sliding sports, we're sorry that Gerhard and Sabina Gleicher could not be on hand the last couple of weeks to see their kids win world championship medals and World Cup races.
That's a bummer, but there's next year.
It's going to be a stressful season for all of these athletes, despite all of the successes this year.